Hello everyone, as promised, I am going to record a separate video solely for the purpose of discussing comprehensively the lessons at hand. So for today, we are going to talk about invertebrate diversity part 2. Okay? So last time, natapos natin yung phylum Porifera, Cnidaria, Ctenophora, Platyhelminthes, and Rotifera. So tatapusin lang natin yung remaining na 4 phyla for this cohort of organisms. So the same pa din yung ating learning objectives. Okay? So as a continuation, we will proceed with phylum Nematoda. These organisms live in aquatic and terrestrial environments, and they can either be parasitic, and if it's parasitic, no, these nematodes would feed on nutrients from their animal and plant host. If they are free living, they feed on bacteria, yeast, fungal hyphae, and algae. Okay? And in terms of symmetry, they are bilaterally symmetrical. So alam natin that if an organism is bilaterally symmetrical, meron na sila nung cephalization. So in the picture right here is the worm species of C. elegans, no, that is often used in aging studies and also for molecular studies. The reason for this is because yung kanilang genes are very much the same with that of human and with that of rats and of higher organisms, say for example. So madalas siyang ginagamit for molecular studies because of that. And these organisms are pseudocoelomate. Okay, alam na dapat natin yung ibig sabihin ng pseudocoelomate and then ibig sabihin ng triploblastic. Okay? Yung outer body covering nila is a thick, it's a chitin collagen-rich cuticle produced by the hypodermis. And this combination of chitin and collagen-rich na cuticle produced by the hypodermis acts as a flexible muscle support. That is why if viewed under the microscope, nematodes are usually shiny, no, like yung cuticle that shiny, and then they are flexible in nature. Cuticle contains the high hydrostatic pressure in the pseudocoelom of nematodes, which house the internal organs of these organisms. So another example would be the parasitic nematode. We can see here, this is Trichinella spiralis, and these encysted portions right here are the juvenile of these parasitic nematodes, no, found in human muscle tissue. And nematodes have 4 longitudinal nerve cords, and these nerve cords fuse at the anterior end, forming the head ganglia or yung primitive brain ng worm. Okay? And meron na silang cephalization at this, no, if basing with this definition. And nematodes would move by contraction of their longitudinal muscles, usually sideways, ano, going to the food source. So mura silang bitin, mura silang snakes for that matter, no. Very similar yung kanilang way of locomotion. In that sense, wala silang cilia or flagella. And complete yung kanilang digestive system, ibig sabihin meron sila ng distinct na mouth and anal region. Okay? Wala din sila nung circulatory system. So how do they facilitate the movement of water and other nutrients from their environment? They rely on passive diffusion. No? This is both for water, gases, and other metabolites in and out. This is primarily achieved because of their semi-permeable body membrane. And they are dioecious. Okay, dioecious, ibig sabihin they both have sexes, ano? And in some organisms, they reproduce by the process of parthenogenesis. So an example for that would be Ascaris lumbricoides, which is a primary nematode species that's involved in human infection. Okay, and you can see this prominent hook-like structure that's used to tawag dyan, to latch, no, or to attach to its host. Okay, here are some interesting videos, ano, of some nematode. You can see in here, this one is parasitic nematode or a roundworm that's escaping from a soon-to-be expired na mosquito larvae. So you can see in here no that na nagsimula siya from the internal organ and then nag-exit siya sa anal region. Okay? And this one is also right here no in solitude. As you can see, this contractile motion mura siya gapa sideway ba, and they would usually form in clumps no. This is also their way of protection, kasi if they are mas marami in a given source, they can afford protection. So if I'm going to forward this video right here, you can see that these organisms would actually become form aggregates. Okay? So magpangitaon nila ang each other ba? Okay? So that's how these organisms are, no? I'm not sure if there's an audio for this one. I think walang audio. Okay. So next would be phylum Annelida. Itong phylum naman na to is composed of invertebrates wherein their body is divided into segments, or what we call metameres. Okay? So body segmentation is also synonymous to metamerism, and they are marked by annuli or circular rings. They live in a variety of environment, no? And just like nematodes, they are triploblastic and they are bilaterally symmetrical. Yung pinagkaiba nila would be they are coelomate organisms. Okay? So coelomate organisms na kung saan their body cavity is lined with tissue derived from the mesoderm, known as the peritoneum. So in the picture right here, you can see a polycate annelid, no? And it's usually used for if you've gone tawag dyan, line fishing, yung hook and line fishing, no, ginagamit siya sa bait. Okay? And another example, common example would be yung ating earthworm, okay? Which is an oligocate. And its body plan is based on these repeated body segments. So very distinct yung body segmentation nila. And these segments are separated internally from each other by septa. So if you try to go at the cross-section level, talagang hindi lang siya sa surface, it's also inside. Okay? And the coelom of annelids is filled with fluid which serves as a hydrostatic skeleton. Okay? Yung outer body covering naman niya, it's not made up of chitin, unlike that of nematode. So other distinguishing characteristic yan nila. It's a non-chitinous cuticle that surrounds the epidermis. And meron din sila nung compact na brain in the anterior of the body, no? And basically, they are also cephalized organisms. Yung locomotion naman nila, it's not by contractile movement no, of these muscles. Yung sa kanila is alternate movement of the longitudinal and circular muscles that produce this peristaltic wave. Okay, so if you have observed ng an earthworm on how it moves, that's basically yung peristalsis, no? Or like for example, if you try to look it in terms of anatomy, yung movement, for example, ng bolus natin as it progresses from the mouth to the stomach, ganun yung kanyang movement. Na kung saan merong part ng earthworm yung nauuna and then hinihila yung nasa posterior end and then anterior and so on. Okay? And in some annelids, they have these bristles that we call setae. Okay? Wherein each segment is used to anchor themselves in the substrate, say for example in the soil. So the hydrostatic nature of the annelid's fluid-based skeleton gives their bodies shape and structure while maintaining the squishy nature of these invertebrate animals. Okay? And the same then with roundworms, they have a complete digestive system. Okay? And this means that the food would pass from the mouth to the pharynx leading to the esophagus at meron siya ng exit portal which is the anal region. Closed din yung kanyang circulatory system, ibig sabihin it's a compact network of these blood vessels. And many are hermaphrodites, wherein they possess both sexes while some are dioecious, kung saan distinct yung male and female organs. Okay? And some, like in this example right here, this earthworm reproduce via budding, or fission, wherein one organism will later on become two. Okay? And gamit ng leech, I think, would be common would be yung this is Herudo medicinalis. This is a cultured leech, no, wherein you can see right here that it's trying to drain the blood from the patient's sore thumb that's experiencing hematoma, no, or it's basically an abnormal accumulation of blood around a particular part of the of human. So ganito yung kanyang ginagamit, no, because that's its nature. Okay. And while we may think of leeches as strictly parasitic, some are actually predatory. Like this one right here. This is the monster leech called the Kinabalu giant red leech. And these creatures have extendable proboscis, which for the most part remains restricted inside their mouth. So the moment that they sense their prey, at first they would actually just go with their prey. No, they would surround their prey, and if they think that is a good food source, then that's the time that they will release this extendable proboscis. Okay, so here's a video for you to watch. Okay.
Feeling up and down the worm's body, it searches for an end. Feeling up and down the worm's body, it searches for an end. Then it starts to suck. The worm fights back, but there is no escape. The leech sucks its prey down like spaghetti, crushing the worm with its muscular throat.
So that's an example of a leech na hindi lang siya nagsasak ng blood or parasitic, no. This is an example of a predatory leech that's, as you can see, swallowing a giant worm. And to catch its prey, as you can see, it has to first sense its food source, and they'll spear this unsuspecting victim with their proboscis, okay, which will they will suck it in and swallow it whole. Okay, so something that's a unique annelida, no? And we also have another diverse clade of invertebrates, the phylum Mollusca. Okay, molluscus, ibig sabihin these are soft-bodied invertebrates, and they inhabit a wide range of environments. And they are identified because of their distinct body characteristics. You know, they have this soft body, many of which have shells. Okay. And some do not have, some have meron. Like for example, yung blue dragon natin, that's an example of mollusk. That's a nudibranch. No, nude, ibig sabihin wala siya ng shell na yun. Okay? And it has a simple, relatively simple body plan with 3 parts. You have the mantle, the foot, and the visceral mass. Okay, this is the mantle, and then the foot, and then the inside would be this visceral mass right here. And they are usually grazers, carnivores, filter, and detritus feeders, and some can even be parasitic. Okay, they can be both free living and occasionally parasitic, and they are also triploblastic. And mollusks also are bilaterally symmetrical organisms, while some can be asymmetrical because of its shell. They are coelomates naman. Okay? And yung coelom, yung body cavity ng mollusks, is filled with a fluid which serves as a hydrostatic skeleton. Okay, it has a shell which adds up to their support system alongside with their shell, especially for organisms that do not have, for mollusks that do not have this protective shell. And in terms of their nervous system, very advanced din. Meron din sila ng nerve ganglia that's at the anterior end, no? And it's composed of the cerebral, pleural, and pedal and visceral with nerve cords. And they have this highly muscular foot for both locomotion and anchorage. Okay? And in terms of digestive system, complete din. Kapag sinabing complete, ano nga ibig sabihin ulit nun? Meron ka ng well-defined na mouth and anal region. Another interesting characteristic of mollusk is meron sila ng radula. So yung radula, para siya actually protrusion. Ano? I have a video later on to show that one to you na mura siya nag-graze, no? Mura siya ginascrape niya yung surface kung saan yung kanyang food. And meron din sila ng open circulatory system. So I don't need to really discuss that one kasi na-discuss na natin yun siya sa general features ng animals. And mollusks can be both monoecious or hermaphroditic or dioecious. And chiefly sexual yung kanilang mode of reproduction. So just as I said a while ago, this is an example of a tawag dyan yung striking feature of mollusks, no, yung radula. Mura siya karangkuan ba, grazing mechanism nila, okay? Which shows their feeding apparatus, no?
The rocks are fuzzed with algae, which they rasp clean using strips of fine, sharp teeth called radula. The radula is a tool possessed only by shellfish.
So as you can see in the video, no, this long na ribbon-like structure, meron siya ng rows of teeth, no. So meron siyang first opening and it will release these rows of teeth which will move parang going to the inside, okay? That's aimed to scrape across its food, rasping off small particles that's embedded. Say for example, yung algae that's on the surface. Okay? So another interesting organism under mollusks would be yung nautilus. Okay? Nautilus are known to be ancient mollusks because they have been dated as early as or like the same with that of some species of dinosaur fossils.
The nautilus is often called a living fossil because similar organisms have existed since before the dinosaurs. Nautiluses are mollusks that inhabit tropical waters around the Indo-Pacific. They use the carbonate in seawater to make their shells. More than 90 suckerless tentacles protrude from a nautilus's shell. They prey on crustaceans like shrimp, along with dead fish. They possess a beak for crushing prey. Nautiluses have poor eyesight, so it is assumed that they use their sense of smell to locate prey. A nautilus will move closer to the surface at night to hunt and relocate to deeper waters during the day to avoid predators. The nautilus's shell consists of a series of chambers. More chambers are added as the nautilus grows. The nautilus occupies the outermost chamber. The other chambers are used to regulate buoyancy. They utilize their siphon to propel themselves through the water by pumping air and water in and out of their shell. A nautilus can live for over 20 years. However, they do not reach reproductive maturity until 10 to 15 years of age. At this point, females will only produce about 12 eggs per year. After mating, a female will lay her eggs and attach them to a hard surface. The eggs take 9 to 12 months to hatch. Newly hatched eggs resemble miniature adults. Due to their low reproductive rates, slow growth, and late maturity, nautilus populations are considered threatened. They are targeted for their shells that are sold commercially for art, furniture, and jewelry. They may be preyed upon by sharks, triggerfish, and octopuses. For more marine facts, click the subscribe button.
So that's an example of another interesting na mollusk, that we call the chambered nautilus. So as you can see, one possible issue for this is because of its parang aesthetic na purpose, na kung saan ginagamit yung kanyang shell for making like yung mga ornaments, and the reason why they are threatened or like endangered is because they are not bred in captivity yet. Like say for example, the Southeast Asian Fisheries Development Center, which is also in close participation with UP Visayas. They are trying to breed these organisms in captivity para ma-replenish yung wild population. Okay? So because they grow very slow and malaki yung mortality at the planktonic stage of their larvae, so talagang nagiging problem siya if they are heavily heavily exploited, because of their value. Okay? And I think we are very common with octopus. No? They are really sentient organisms. And as I said, kahit 3 years na ako sa Japan, talagang hindi ako nahilig sa takoyaki, which is a major na ingredient ng wherein octopus yung major ingredient. Kasi nga, I believe these are really sentient organisms na murag lisod jud siya kaunon, and they are capable of feeling emotions. So an interesting octopus would be this mimic octopus, which can, in a matter of split seconds, change its coloration, based on its environment. Okay, so let's watch this video.
This is the mimic octopus, a master of disguise. In its natural state, the mimic octopus is a light beige color, and like most octopi, can change its skin pigment to blend in with its surroundings. But the mimic octopus takes things to another level altogether. Found in Indonesia and in the Great Barrier Reef, it's an octopus that is so intelligent that when it feels threatened, it can fool possible predators into thinking that it is in fact another, more deadly species. It does this by changing its color, shape, and perhaps most interestingly, the way it moves and behaves. It's reputed to be able to impersonate 15 other kinds of sea creature, the most notable being the poisonous flatfish, deadly sea snakes, and the highly venomous lionfish. It's thought that even though these impersonations aren't flawless, they can give the crafty octopus enough time to escape before the predator realizes it's been duped. The mimic octopus was discovered relatively recently in 1998, possibly because up until then, it had done such a good job of disguising itself.
So that's one of the really interesting species of octopus, no? To date, hindi naman lahat ng octopus are known to like really perform counter shading and camouflage, no? Pero talagang mimic octopus is one of those interesting octopus there is. Okay? And the last phylum for invertebrates, yay, will be on phylum Arthropoda. Okay? And these organisms, yung salient features naman nila, they have this jointed appendages. They have the exoskeleton and then they have these jointed appendages. Appendages, ito yung mga extensions from the body. If this is the body, these extensions right here is what we call appendages. Okay? They have different modes. They can be carnivorous, herbivorous, omnivorous, but mostly are herbivores. And they are also triploblastic and bilaterally symmetrical. And these segmentations, meron din silang segmented bodies. And this is what we call tagmata for arthropods. Okay? Meron silang cephalization na din, like they have this distinct head and trunk that contains the central control system. You have the head, the thorax, and abdomen, and the cephalothorax and abdomen that contains the rest of these visceral organs. Okay? And the coelom in adult arthropods are reduced mainly because to give way for the growing exoskeleton. Because as the these organisms are growing, what they do is they have to molt. Ano? Yung process natin is what we call ecdysis. ECDYSIS. So it's mainly the regrowth of its body from their existing body, and in the process they will shed their exoskeleton, and they do not have a blood. They have what we call this hemosil, no this hemosil, no their hemosil rather, yung body cavity nila is filled with hemolymph. Ito yung counterpart nila ng blood. Yung pinagkaiba niya lang with blood ng human is that it's mainly made up of instead of yung pigment na hemoglobin, it's a hemocyanin, no? Which is mainly color blue, imparted by the copper ion. So meron tayong example niyan later sa horseshoe crab. And they possess this cuticular exoskeleton as their support system, mainly to separate it from its external environment. Yung nervous tissue niya din is very distinct, very advanced. It has a pair of these ganglia above the esophagus. It has this ventral cord and the ganglia for each of these body segments. So talagang separate yung nerve cords that's in these body segments. And very complex din yung kanyang muscular system. Meron siya nung outer cuticle exoskeleton and striated muscles for movement. Okay? And some of these taxa would reproduce asexually through parthenogenesis, although most arthropods are dioecious. Okay? So complete yung kanyang digestive system, and they have an open circulatory system. Okay? So an example of widely ginagamit na arthropod for commercial use will be that of horseshoe crab, which is also a primitive invertebrate. These are primitive arthropods actually that's made use or that's of use to human because of its hemocyanin, okay, because of this hemolymph rather.
This bluish liquid is one of the most expensive resources in the world. No, it's not the blue milk from Star Wars. It's actually blood from a horseshoe crab. And the stuff this blood makes costs $60,000 a gallon. So why is it so expensive? And who's buying horseshoe crab blood? The blue color comes from copper in the blood. But that's not its most interesting feature. The blood contains a special clotting agent. It's used to make a concoction called limulus amoebocyte lysate, or LAL. Before LAL, scientists had no easy way of knowing whether a vaccine or medical tool was contaminated with bacteria, like E. coli or Salmonella. Scientists would inject vaccines into huge numbers of rabbits and then basically wait for symptoms to show up. But when LAL was approved for use in 1970, it changed everything. Drop a minuscule amount of it onto a medical device or vaccine, and the LAL will encase any gram-negative bacteria in a jelly cocoon. While it can't kill the bacteria, the jelly seal is like a fire alarm, alerting us to the presence of what could become a potentially lethal infection and prevent it from spreading. Each year, the medical industry catches around 600,000 horseshoe crabs. The crabs are drained of 30% of their blood, and up to 30% of the crabs don't live through the process. The survivors are returned to the water, but no one really knows how well or if they recover. In 2016, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature bumped the American horseshoe crab up to vulnerable on its red list, one step below endangered. And the US population could keep falling by as much as 30% over the next 40 years. LAL labs claim that the returned crabs eventually recover, but new evidence suggests that's not always the case. Wynne Watson is trying to figure out what happened.
Okay, so I'm going to end at that point of the video, no? So you can just see how human activities contribute or like change the scale in terms of the diversity of these organisms. Take note that these are organisms, just like the chambered nautilus that I showed you a while ago, these organisms do not breed in captivity and they take a lot of time to grow. And yung ginagawa nila ngayon na na procedure wherein to come up with the Limulus amoebocyte lysate, wherein they drain around 70% of the horseshoe crab's hemolymph, and then they would say put back the tawag dyan, yung horseshoe crab from to its environment is not a guarantee na talagang nag-survive siya. So it's actually a pressing concern. And say for example, in the Panay Island, you can see a lot of these horseshoe crabs sa shore ng Hinigaran and Himamaylan kasi it's very close to UP Visayas, no, na talagang washed off, and it's speculated na talaga because of the high demand, high market value of the hemolymph from horseshoe crab, possible na kinuha lang yung hemolymph and then in-export somewhere, parang ganun. Tapos pinabayaan na lang yung namatay ng organism. So if this practice would really continue, there's really a possibility that these supposedly tawag dyan, ancestral organisms would become extinct, no, at some point in time. So it's really a pressing concern. Okay, and here's another tawag dyan, unique characteristic among arthropods. As you know, arthropods, because of their a stiff exoskeleton, during the course of their growth, they have to shed this one. And this is why the process of molting, or more commonly, or of ecdysis, or more commonly known as molting. So you have in the picture right, in the video right there, that's actually a cicada. And cicadas, although they look scary in nature, they are mostly beneficial. Ano? They prune, say for example, mature trees, they aerate the soil, and usually talagang massive yung kanilang die-off. In Japan, say for example, saba kayo sila during ang transition from winter to summer. Parang ganun. So usually pag summer, namamatay na yan sila, and their bodies serve as an important source of nitrogen for the growing trees because they are usually forming aggregates in trees. Ano? So that's an example of some peculiar characteristic among arthropods. So as it sheds, you can see that the new body will be formed and it will leave its old exoskeleton. Okay, so that's something that's unique among arthropods. Okay, and going into the subphylum of arthropods, you have also the chelicerates, yung horseshoe crabs na sinabi natin kanina, no? These organisms, meron sila ng pair of chelicerae, pair of pedipalps, and 4 pairs of walking legs. So these includes yung ating horseshoe crab, the Limulus polyphemus. You have the sea spider, okay, the nymphon species, and also our spiders, the arachnids. Okay, so very large din yung group na to. You also have the Myriapoda. So myriapods, ibig sabihin many-footed. Okay, and they are chiefly terrestrial. Yung salient feature ng myriapods would be these repugnatorial glands wherein they use to secrete foul smelling compounds to deter possible predators. Okay? So usually baho dyan siya. Okay? This is what it looks like. It's usually situated just proximal to the eye and the chelicerae. And we have our crustaceans. Okay, these are the only arthropods with 2 pairs of antennae. So if you have tried cleaning shrimp, say for example, meron siyang mahaba na antenna, meron din siya nung maliit na antennal na pair. And most crustaceans are aquatic, and the majority are marine, but some can be found in fresh and brackish water. Brackish, ibig sabihin yung combination of fresh and marine water, no? And this subphylum includes yung ating lobsters, you have the crabs, what else? Yung crayfish natin, you have the shrimps, the copepods, the barnacles, and many other organisms. Okay? So as apart from the 2 pairs of antennae, you also have here the pair of mandible. Okay, this pair of mandible right here, the compound eye, which is usually on a stalk. okay, and 2 pairs of maxillae on their hand. Okay, and of course, yung body segmentation, which is peculiar to that of arthropods. And they usually respire via gills, okay, gill slits on their sides. And lastly, we have the subphylum Hexapoda. Okay, Hexapoda are named as such because of the presence of 6 legs. So many insects are under this subphylum. No, you have the flesh fly. No, yung nakikita natin, say for example in tawag dyan, unattended na meat, say for example, or fecal matter. Okay, and yung ating tutubi, okay, yung ating beetles, say for example, are under Hexapoda. So that's it for our invertebrate diversity, and I hope somehow this lecture